I beg to differ there. There was a entry in Bloomberg that came out. Robert Gates, the defense secretary, said, and it was interesting, this was just last week, he said NATO partners need to do more because the United States is contributing at this point 75% of NATO's budget altogether, of which we were under understanding that it was 25%, of which just a few months back he did say that. So if anything, this backseat role seems to really be full front throttle when you look at how much the U.S. is contributing, which in essence then, let me come to Sara Flounders and ask you how much the United States is actually in the driver's seat when it comes to what it's doing. And of course, when we want to look at what Robert Gates said, if you remember, 3 countries, Iran, Syria, and Libya, they took out the, I guess, the weakest in that link. And they're saying that, well, Syria is now on the front page for them.
Well, it's very clear that U.S. policy was to target the 3 countries, and this was a targeting from the beginning after the invasion of Iraq. It was Iran, Syria, and Libya. Libya, at the time of the U.S. invasion, tried to pull back and make an accommodation. And they bought a few years of time, but it was never enough. So now you have a full-scale frontal attack, and not 1 minute of this attack could continue without U.S. support. The U.S. is not only 75% of NATO, but they are the crucial missile launching capacity. France and Britain literally could not carry out an air war beyond a couple of days without U.S. support and backup. So the U.S. is really the deciding factor in all of this, but all of this is a mad scramble because of the limitations of U.S. military power. And we can see that in Iraq, where they have been unable to prevail. They may not even get a SOFA, status of forces agreement. We can see it in Afghanistan, and we can see it in the military dictatorships they set up throughout the entire region, the corrupt monarchies. All of these are tottering. They have collapsed in Egypt, collapsed in Tunisia, and so there's an effort to go back in again with military power to Libya. But it's important to recognize it's incredible that Libya has been able to survive 90 days of this bombardment. And in those 90 days, the opposition is growing. In the beginning, there was absolute silence on the part of those who should have spoken out, and finally are getting some voice. But all this is the limits also of just what the U.S. can do. And we can see that people's resistance from below may really be, and it's clear, is becoming the decisive factor.
Well, I'm sure arms manufacturers in the United States are just licking their chops when they look at the scenarios unfolding in the Arab world. But Colin, Cavell, I mean, you know, when we look at what Robert Gates said about Iran, Syria, and Libya, I mean, it's interesting when they don't, you know, they don't put Saudi Arabia, Yemen, and Bahrain into the equation as if they are model democracies. And I'd like to reflect right now on what U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for the Bureau of Democracy, Human Rights, and Labor has said regarding, in one case in point, the Persian Gulf island of Bahrain. Let's take a listen to what he said.
We continue to receive reports about some students being expelled from universities, some workers being dismissed merely because they've exercised their political rights. We remain concerned about the continued detention of a number of Bahrainis who have neither been charged nor tried, about the treatment of those people in detention, about reports that some have been subjected to physical abuse during interrogations. I urge Bahrain to abide by its commitments to transparent judicial proceedings conducted in full accordance with both local law and Bahrain's international legal obligations. I've also expressed my concern for the government to take tangible steps to rebuild confidence and trust in the medical system. Bahrain is an important partner of the United States. We have a long-standing alliance based on shared political, economic, and security interests.
Colin Cavell, I'm always tempted not to fault the U.S. Assistant Secretary of State there for the statement since he was reading it off paper, but rather the person who wrote it, which in the same breath is saying, well,